Imagine you get hit by Trunk Kun. You wake up and didn't get isekai'd, but instead you are forced to do a spirit contract with a random guy. Then you end up inheriting a demon power from 300 years ago, and out of nowhere you become the most powerful spirit swordsman. That's the story of our Young, that had to grow up fast, having lost his parents when he was just a young boy. He worked hard in the face of adversity to make enough money for food and rent, doing odd jobs like computer servicing and fortune telling. One night he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. A guy was fighting with a young girl, and it looked so real. He thought they must be filming an action scene for a movie, as the special effects coming from their hands were incredible. Young walked home, but his mind was far away thinking about the movie. Suddenly, a truck Kun isekai'd services roared past and he felt the impact shudder through him. When he opened his eyes, an unimaginable sight stood before him, his younger self staring back at him. He thought that he traveled through time. But then, Zai, the guy from the movie scene, stepped out and shook his head no. No, he hadn't gone back in time. His body was dead due to the accident. He was now nothing but a spirit. He found it hard to believe such an unbelievable truth until he saw himself on the news. Zai explained he was an exorcist and proposed that Yang become his soul image. A soul image is a spirit that can still communicate with the living, and they are said to have great spiritual power. As Yang was already able to see spirits while alive, Zai thought he was the perfect candidate. Right now, Yang's spirit hangs in the balance. Zai said he can stay for only 7 days, then turn into an evil spirit or become a part of their world. Yang thinks he might find a way to get revived and accepts it, receiving a ring from Zai. Zai orders him to protect his fiancée, Xiao, but he notices an ominous black aura surrounding them. He tries to call for help, but they are suddenly pulled into a mysterious realm. Suddenly, the dark mist started to swirl around Yang. Xiao acted quickly and shoved him out of the way just in time before the aura could strike him. Yang soon realized his ring had a mysterious power, but it was too late. He saw Xiao, but she wasn't herself anymore. She stared at him with hate in her eyes and started to strangle him. He could feel the pain of her grip, and soon enough Yang's vision faded away, and he woke up in a strange dream. In this dream, Xiao walked away from Zai sorrowfully while others laughed at her. Just as Yang was about to reach out for her hand, Zai pulled him out of the surreal field. Zai asked Yang what kind of weapon he was good at, and teaches him how to summon it through the ring. As he concentrates, he gets surprised when a spirit blade emerges from his palm. In a split second, he swings it in the air and cuts through the evil spirits possessing Xiao. The three go to Zai's mansion, where they can perform a ritual to cleanse the world and recognize Yang as Zai's soul image. Yang was baffled to observe that most of the family was so cold towards Zai, even though he was the head of the family. He wondered why, and Zai told him that many wicked spirits and people wanted to take away his life to take his power, including those in his own family who could only survive due to his strength. Zai explains Yang's ring is special. It connects their minds and they get to know their information. They must always keep it a secret though, because if Zai dies, Yang will too. Yang saw the family's butler carrying a very special sword. It was gifted to them hundreds of years ago by a famous swordsmith, and he named it the Loi sword. This sword was made to protect the world from evil spirits. Then Lai, the butler's son, showed up and told his father that Zai's grandmother wanted to see him. So he left the family's sword with Lai to take to the shrine. Yang went with Lai to put the sword in its place. They were talking about how Lai hated Zai when all of a sudden, Lai demanded to know Zai's birth date. Yang refused to tell. In a flash, Lai whipped out his knife and pointed it straight at Yang. Lai lunged at Yang, leaving him no choice but to dodge and weave. But his luck was running out. Soon he found himself backed into a corner. With a sinister grin, Lai uses a forbidden technique and summons evil spirits. The blade sinks into Yang, meeting no resistance as the spirit feels every agonizing stab. He desperately attempts to break free of Lai's grasp, but all the suffering only fuels his murderer's determination, asking him about Zai's information. Yang desperately clung to a glimmer of hope, watching for an opportunity to strike when Lai became distracted. He lunged forward with his sword, only for the force of Lai's spirit power to render him weak and helpless. Lai thrusts the knife into Yang's chest, causing him to cry out in agony. Darkness clouds his vision and he quickly falls unconscious. Then, without warning, Yang awakens to find himself in a strange world. He remembers how he constantly asks for Zai's help and is now ready to take things into his own hands. He is determined to do this all by himself. He watched someone standing and holding the Loi sword before him, and he could feel his desire to become stronger and more powerful growing inside of him. With a determined lunge, he finally grasped it in his hands and with one swift motion swung it towards Lai. Lai couldn't believe what he was seeing. Yang had managed to wield the sword as if it were nothing. He seemed like a different person, his mind consumed with thoughts of strength through murder. But before Young could stab Lai, something snapped back into place and he stopped his attack altogether. Lowering his guard, Lai lunged forward with accusations of an evil spirit possessing him. Luckily, Zai appeared just in time and blocked the strike. Zai glared at Lai, warning him that nobody was allowed to touch his soul image except for himself. As Lai moved in for another attack, Zai easily pinned him down to the ground and banished Lai and his father from the family. Later that day, the family begins the mysterious ritual. Young couldn't understand the words Zai was saying, but he could feel an incredible energy coming from him, an energy that seemed almost divine. Young was mesmerized by the power Zai had to maintain peace and combat evil forces. It was like being close to a god. Zai ordered Young forward and held up the Loi sword. He commanded Young to kneel, ready to accept his fate. But there was an unexpected twist. Zai presented him with the blessed weapon, binding their spirits together. Since then, Young has been having the same strange dream. In it, he saw a man named Zicheng talking to someone else. Every time Zicheng called this person Lord, the stranger would gently remind him that they were like family. Finally, the stranger revealed his name, Loi. Young couldn't believe his eyes. He felt the Loi sword burning in his hands, and then he felt Loi's embrace from behind. Suddenly, he saw a vision of the past, where Loi was killing innocent victims without mercy. But just when it seemed like the madness would never end, Zicheng leaped forward and put an end to it by stabbing his master with one fatal blow. Young woke up, and his eyes widened with shock as he became aware of the fact that his hands were covered in blood. Looking up, he realized to his horror that it had come from Zai, whom he had stabbed unconsciously. Just then, the car crashed and Zai started to lose consciousness. Young was thrown in prison as a punishment. No matter how hard Young pleaded his innocence, the family refused to listen. Even Xiao doesn't believe what he's saying. Tears streaming down her face, she reprimands him for not being able to keep Zai safe when it was his job as a soul image, and reveals that Zai's body wasn't in its best condition after the ritual. Young's tears began to flow as reality struck him. He remembered Zai's words uttered before the ritual, that this could be their last moment together. Then a servant came in with something special from Zai, an exquisite set of clothes, specially tailored to protect Young. As he realized how much care and effort had gone into protecting him, Young was overcome with guilt for hurting his master. But Xiao had a daring proposition for him. If he wanted to be set free, he had to take up the Loi sword and plunge it into his own body. If his loyalty to Zai truly ran deep and pure, then surely no harm would come of it. Young took the blade and sighed with frustration. He was tired of running away from his problems. But just as he was about to stab himself, Xiao stopped him. She released him and allowed him to visit Zai's room. There, he met a fox spirit, the soul image of Zai's deceased father. Zai has previously warned him against fighting the fox spirit, but he didn't listen. Young attacked with a swift swing of his sword, but he was sent flying into another world. Suddenly, two girls appeared before him with menacing expressions and threatened to hurt him if he didn't break the soul image contract with Zai. Young bravely stood firm, confident that the special clothes Zai had given him would protect him from any harm. But the girl was quick to target his unprotected area. Even though no physical damage was done to his hand, the pain was unbearable. The girl beat him until he didn't have any strength left. Suddenly, a fox spirit appeared and took over. He made fun of Young for having a one-sided contract, as when Zai dies, he'll die too. The fox pointed out that Zai never trusted him. But Young points out that the fox spirit master is the one who didn't trust the fox. Its master died several years ago, and the fox is still alive. The fox spirit was so mad that it stabbed Young in the chest, leaving him unable to move. Young tried desperately to get closer to his sword, and thoughts of his time with Zai filled his head. He knew he couldn't just run away anymore. He had to fight and be stronger if he wanted to protect Zai. The air around Young began to shimmer and sparkle with a brilliant blue light. Suddenly, he transformed into Zicheng, the strongest swordsman of all time. The girl moved forward to try to hit him, but he quickly cut her arm. He dared the fox spirit to battle, but the fox spirit said he wasn't strong enough yet. Instead, the fox gave him a special potion that could help heal Zai. Zai's wounds miraculously heal after drinking the potion, and he rises with new vigor. However, he has lost his spirit power and doesn't know how to recover it. Without telling anyone, they sneak out of the mansion and seek out his teacher to discover the story of the Loi sword. Zai's master told him that his exorcist's powers were hidden inside the Loi sword. This was created by Zicheng to protect people from evil spirits, but it had another mysterious power too. It could store away the powers of an exorcist so they couldn't use them for bad things. Young was so surprised when he discovered that Zicheng was the same person from his dreams. Zai said that Young must be related to Zicheng, and Young started to think that all of the stories about his family being powerful exorcists. Zai thought about how he could get his powers back while heading back, and Young asked why he didn't want to stop being an exorcist. Zai replied that many spirits were waiting for a chance to take him down if he ever got too weak. He then told Young that there were things in this world even scarier than evil spirits, humans. Before them stood an unexpected surprise, Lai, ready to take them on in a battle they weren't expecting. Lai laughed wickedly and rushed towards them. Young quickly unsheathed his sword and fought back. Lai was too fast though, managing to blast the area above them. Young used the distraction to run away with Zai. Young knew he had to do something to regain Zai's power. Zai reveals they have two options: to seal the Lioi sword, and the other one is to Young sacrifice himself to give his power to Zai. Zai's wounds were getting worse and he asked Young to leave him behind, telling him that without his powers, there was no reason for Zai to live. But Young refused to abandon his friend and saw beyond the godlike facade, understanding that underneath it all, Zai was still a human with emotions and feelings. Young embraces him and mentions the deal where he'll vanish once Zai dies, but Zai confesses that it's not true. As long as he's wearing the hair tie, he will live. Lai manages to find them deep in the forest. Zai planted a peck on Young's ring, and in an instant, a burst of visions flooded his mind, revealing to him exactly what drove Zicheng to protect his master. All of a sudden, brilliant blue light filled the night sky as it made way for Young's transformation into Zicheng. Young lunged forward, attempting to slice through Lai, but Lai was too fast and managed to dodge his blade. Then, Lai used his powerful evil spirit to strike back at Young. Despite this, Young's sword seemed to cut right through it like butter. However, he wasn't able to injure him, as if the arm was made of stronger steel. All of a sudden, Lai pulled out a mysterious talisman that had the power to control spirits. An evil aura started swirling around Young and he found himself unable to escape its grasp. Zai grabbed a paper talisman, desperately trying to block the mind-controlling spell. But it was too late. Young had already been frozen in place and collapsed down to his knees. Despite his sword still pointed outwards for protection, he couldn't move enough to protect his master. Zai tried to fight back against Lai, but he couldn't. Without hesitating, Lai reached out, grabbed the hair tie off his head, and wrapped it into a voodoo doll, casting an incredibly powerful spell on Zai that brought immense pain and suffering. Young's heart raced as he watched his master suffer, and he knew he had to do something. Taking a deep breath, Young cut the hair tie with one swift motion. He knew he couldn't take on Lai himself, so instead, he used every ounce of spirit power within him to cut the hair tie, tears streaming down his face. Knowing that this would be his last act of service to his master, Young sacrificed himself in hopes that one day Zai would become the most powerful exorcist the world had ever seen. Young's eyes shot open and he found himself in a void of darkness. He thought he saw his parents, but he was hesitant to move toward them. He could feel Zai calling out to him, so instead of chasing after the illusion of his parents, Young summoned his sword and ran off in search of Zai. Somehow, he manages to wake up, after Zai used his spiritual power to return his spirit back. He watches Lai's evil spirits lift Zai into the air. He reaches out his hand and rescues Zai from Lai's wicked snare. With sword in hand, he bravely stands in the way of Lai's wrath. He is determined to protect Zai no matter what. It's his mission as Zai's soul image. He charged at Lai, smashing each spiritual attack that came his way. He leaped high into the sky and with a mighty swing, he defeated Lai.